it's that, amongst other things, is very easy to control. The inability or the unwillingness of people to look you in the eye has nothing to do with whether or not they're telling the truth or whether they're lying. There's all kinds of other things going on. When we like somebody, we tend to look them in the eye. When we don't, then we tend not to. Well, think of a courtroom experience where someone's being cross-examined by the other side, by the lawyer for the other side. Are they going to be looking in the eye? Probably not. They're going to be looking away because this is not someone they think is on their side. It can also be very misleading in some cultures. We have a particular problem in Canada. I don't know if you have the same experience in Latin America, but we have indigenous people. It is part of their culture not to look at someone in the eye, especially a superior, to look away, that it's a sign of disrespect. Well, what if they come into our courtroom and we don't understand that? And say, well, they won't look us in the eye, well, therefore they must be lying. Same thing with fidgeting. Again, it has nothing to do with whether the person is telling a lie or telling the truth. It has to, they may be nervous, but consider what you would be like if you were charged with a crime that you did not commit, and you are in a courtroom trying to tell your story. You think you might be a little nervous, and therefore fidgeting. There's this very interesting phenomenon called mirroring. What it is as the questioner becomes more and more upset with the person they're questioning and not getting the information they want, they start to fidget more. So they start to move around. And the person who's watching the questioner starts to mirror that. They also start to be fidgeting around. So there's all kinds of things going on that have nothing to do with credibility and self-assessment. On the other hand, we also have this group of people who are very good at lying. They sit there, they're calm, they're collected. They don't feel any conscience, they don't care. And they're very easy at lying. What are the consequences of these? Oh, very, very important. If we are unable to detect, if we are relying upon these false cues to decide whether or not someone's telling the truth or telling a lie, then we are going to be making mistakes. Police officers in interviewing suspects, if they are relying on these cues, and they're actually taught to rely on these cues in these police manuals, they're told that if the person will look in the eye is lying, they're bringing the wrong people into court. They're charging the wrong people. And once they're in the court system, how likely is it that we are going to be able to detect that they are wrongly charged? Innocent people will appear to be guilty because we're relying upon these cues. Innocent people will wrongly be found to be lying. There we go. The judges, other people who have to make these decisions will place too much emphasis on the way the person appears in court. They'll underestimate the importance of other factors that may be much more important, and I'll talk about that again when I come to this idea of what I call confirmation bias. Okay, so that's the non-verbal cues. What about the content? Well, you can say, well, we'll ignore how they look, and we'll just listen to their story, and we'll see how they tell the story. What do we believe about the way truthful witnesses and liars tell their stories? Again, these are beliefs that are shared across all cultures. First of all, we think a truthful account of what happened. It will be a detailed account. It will contain all kinds of detail. The story will be told in a chronological order. The person will start at the beginning and in a very systematic way will tell us what happened. The story will not change over time. Every time a person tells a story, it will be roughly the same story. After all, we think, well, if it really happened to you, you should be able to tell the story, the same story time and again. It's only a liar who won't be able to tell the same story because it didn't happen to them, so therefore the results will be, the details will be different. Okay, these are the beliefs throughout the culture. What does the research tell us? Well, in fact, what the research tells us is that this first belief is true. This one is true. Truthful accounts are more detailed. So we've got that right. So that's an important indicator of the truth. What about the rest of it? Well, it turns out that all of these beliefs and assumptions that we have are incorrect. It's the liars who tend to tell the story in a chronological order. It's the truth tellers who tend to tell a story that bumps all around. And when you think about it, you can sort of understand why. Someone who's lying has to keep the story straight. So they're going to tell the story in a certain way. They're going to start at the beginning, and they're going to go to the end. Someone who is telling the truth, they'll start the story, and then they'll remember something that they forgot to say, and so they'll give another detail, and the story will start to become all jumbled up. But they're telling the truth, and yet we believe that they're lying, because they can't keep their story straight. We have this idea that you should be able to tell the same story if it's truthful time and time again. Not so. Truthful stories are not more consistent. As people remember the events as they come to them, they're going to tell what happened. And because they're recalling real events, they're not concerned about the consistency of the statement. What they want to do is make sure that we understand everything they're saying. And so they're likely to have more contradictions. We have this belief that memories don't improve over time. I mean, it seems like common sense. Surely the further away you are from an event, the worse your memory is going to be. But in fact, the research shows that's not always the case. That in fact, as people remember the story and tell it again, they do remember other truthful parts of the story. And yet, time and again, the way that we think we can tell whether someone's lying is say, well, they can't even keep their story straight from day 1 to day 2. Well, if we're relying on that assumption, then we are making a false assumption about whether or not someone's telling the truth.